Sister was decent. Yeah, well, they give me with old earnings.
Granddaughter Masley.
It was down there for.
Yeah,
One of them. That's what I would have been
Better in my face.
It's a holiday, they say. I don't think he's maybe
Bodyboarding base.
Isabel was my brother-in-law.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to open the Services Assets Committee, and at the same time, I need to adjourn the proceedings until the conclusion of the public section of the council meeting. So, yeah, I'll move that, and I second it, please. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kramer. Okay, so we'll move straight into the meeting of council. Welcome everyone here for this meeting on Tuesday, the 23rd of June, 2020. And just remind councillors that we are live on YouTube and Zoom. We'll use Zoom until the 25th. So we still have people out on Zoom. So we'll go through the agenda. We'll be taking a break at about 10:30 for a cup of tea and lunch at approximately 12:15. We have got a big day ahead of us, so we'll keep moving. Are there any apologies? I don't believe there are. Any for early departures on the like today? Okay. No leave of absence has been advised, but are there any leave of absence other than the ones that are? Any conflict of interest in relation to this agenda? There's no public forum this morning. We do have an extraordinary urgent item that will be heard and confidential at the conclusion of the meeting later on this afternoon. So I'll read the whole thing.
Yes.
This morning we have a late item to add to the agenda. The item is in provision of the recycling services and will be in public excluded. The item is not included with the agenda as there have been delays in getting the negotiations with the Invercargill City Council underway, and it was unclear as to whether Southern District Council were going to be able to resolve that negotiation process ahead of the 30th of June 2020. Some good progress was made last week, and as a result, staff are now in a position to better understand the timeframe and approximate budget for the revised contract with the Invercargill City Council. The reason that discussion of this item cannot be delayed until a subsequent meeting is that staff are now in a better position to complete the process by the end of the financial year and ensure the continuity of recycling services. I therefore move that the provision of recycling services be included as a late item. Is there a second, please? Councillor Rosenthal. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is item 6, confirmation of council minutes. You will find them in your agenda. Are there any sorry, on the hub? They've all been circulated. Is there any discussion around any amendments or the like? If not, I'll move that we confirm the minutes of that meeting. Councillor Harper, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We move straight into the reports. First report is item 7.1, adoption of the annual plan, page 7 of your agenda. Welcome everybody.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. First of all, I'll take the report as read. A little bit of deja vu for a few members from the Finance and Assurance Committee yesterday. The purpose of this report is for council to adopt the final draft of the annual plan 2020-21. This adoption date will ensure the statutory requirements are met. Up to this point in time, there have been a number of discussions and changes to the draft annual plan, with the most recent being presented to Council on the 22nd of April. At this meeting, Council considered revised guidance for the direction of the annual plan, including a reduced rate increase and a request to endorse the reduction of the Te Anau Airport Manapōuri rate in light of COVID-19 developments. Subsequent to that meeting, the rate increase for the 2020-21 financial year is proposed to be 2.31% compared to the 3.27% proposed in the LTP 2018-2028. As mentioned in the report, one-off measures have been taken in this annual plan to reduce the rates increase to our ratepayers without compromising the services that Council delivers to the community. The Finance and Assurance Committee had some good discussion yesterday, understanding the reasons for the approach in this annual plan as discussed in the report. The Finance and Assurance Committee recommended the adoption of the annual plan to Council at its meeting yesterday, with one minor change to the end of the recommendation D to change its financial position to Council's financial position. Mrs. Mara will now discuss the financial considerations of the draft plan before Mr. Chilton gives an overview of the annual plan design.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship and Councillors. As mentioned, the proposed rate increase for the 2021 year is 2.31%. You'll recall at our 22nd of April meeting, the discussion was around a 2.65% rate increase, and this reduction to 2.31 is as a result of the decrease in the Te Anau Airport Manapōuri rate, as recommended by the Community Board. A lot of detailed commentary around the numbers has been provided in the covering report, and therefore my discussions today will be relatively high level. However, always happy to answer any questions that you may have. Although there have been various increases in costs, contracts and projects from what was proposed in the LTP, as outlined on page 11, the reduction in our proposed rate has been achieved by a number of key measures. Various operational savings, funding of Council's share of the roading emergency works as a result of the flooding event in February from internal loan rather than rates or reserves, offsetting rates with roading reserves, and increasing the forestry dividend paid from forestry reserves by an additional 0.4 million. As mentioned earlier, the use of roading and forestry reserves is a one-off approach to assist in addressing the potential impact of rates increase on our ratepayers, given the effect of COVID-19 and the impact on the economy. It is also important to note that this approach may result in higher rates increases for 21-22 and beyond. The draft budgets are consolidated into the forecast statement of comprehensive income, also known as the P&L, and the statement of financial position, also known as the balance sheet. These draft financial statements are included in the full annual plan document on pages 94, 96 and 97, and compare the proposed annual plan to year 3 of the LTP. The statement of comprehensive income on page 94 is forecasting a net deficit for 2021 of 4.9 million. This is slightly higher than proposed in the LTP, and explanations of the variances are included on page 16 of your agenda. In relation to the statement of financial position on pages 96 and 97, the only significant variances from the LTP are in relation to property, plant and equipment and external debt. Council is forecast to be requiring approximately $20 million of external debt in 2021 as a result of our planned capital works. Interest on the term debt has been allowed for in the budgets at 3.65% for a term of 30 years, which is consistent with the assumptions that we used in the long-term plan. Consideration must also be given to Council's compliance with its key financial indicators outlined in the financial strategy. Specifically, our rates increase to be no more than local government cost index, known as LGCI, plus 2%. For 2021, in the 1828 long-term plan, the LGCI was forecast at 2.2%. Based on the information provided by BRO in September 19, there has been no change in this forecast. Therefore, the 2021 proposed rates increase of 2.31% is well within our self-imposed cap. A second measure is our total debt not to exceed 100% of total annual revenue. As mentioned earlier, we anticipate we will require $20 million of long-term external debt And this is approximately 25% of our total revenue for 2021. So this too is also within our self-imposed cap. Lastly, I'd like to direct your attention to recommendation D of this report, which is regarding council's balanced budget. The Finance and Assurance Committee discussed in detail this recommendation yesterday, and that it is driven primarily by the fact that council does not fully fund depreciation at this point. The committee are comfortable that the projected operating deficit of 4.9 million is financially prudent. I will now hand over to Mr. Chilton, who will tell us a little bit more about the story behind the design.
Thanks, Sheree. Good morning, everybody. This document's about facing challenges, being bold and strong, which is reflected in the choice of colours throughout. It shows work happening behind the scenes, and through choice of images, it invites readers to think about the why rather than just the what. An example is ageing infrastructure, and in particular bridges. It would be a very rare occurrence for somebody to get out of their car and have a look under a bridge before they drove their family and loved ones over it. Without realising it, there's an implied level of trust in council that we're going to keep them safe, and which is easily taken for granted. So when bridges are closed, while some people see problems and issues, councils see safety. Photos in the document have been selected to represent forward movement, where to from here, from the old to the new, technology, libraries, innovation, playgrounds, skate parks, and of course new bridges. There's a balance of photos from the land to the sea, the people and the environment. Photos show some of our smaller communities that often struggle with water waste and recycling during the height of tourism. Ethel, Waikala, Colac Bay, Oropoki, Otahu. We have visually represented the arts, culture and heritage, Rakiura recycling. We show what's in the small shed in the middle of the paddock, the big shiny costly water pipes, waterworks, sewage ponds. Once again, people take for granted the clean water that comes out of a tap when you turn it on. What goes into building a road, a flood bank, footpath, it's all in the work behind the scenes. A visual theme through the corporate document since the 2018-2028 long-term plan has been focusing the lens on councillors and staff out in the district. Throughout, we show the councillors as approachable and connected to their communities. They know their area, they feel the struggles, they see the triumphs, they're living it too. In conclusion, the project team appreciates the ongoing assistance and cooperation we receive from our elected members in telling the stories of our corporate documents.
Thank you for the summary, team. Summary of a lot of extensive amount of work, so thank you so much. And thank you for drawing our attention to D. I'm going to do the same with E and F, but this is the matters around the Te Anau Airport category rate being decreased. And just draw your attention that it is in line with section 80 of the Local Government Act 2002. So it's outside of our norm. Are there any comments or questions from councillors in relation to this report? Councillor Harper.
Mr. Your Worship, item number 31 there on page 11. The fourth bullet point, the additional contractors required to assist with building regulations activities. How many actual additional people do we need or contractors? What is their role?
They're involved with processing resource consents on an as needed basis. So it's truly very much demand driven.
So there's temporary.
No contractors who are employed to process specific consents as needed. Plus manage that based on the day-to-day workload.
Ensure our building consents are done on time.
And item 47, 48, which was much the same thing actually. The actual inspection of the swimming pools, what actually does that entail? Is it the pool itself or the equipment that operates
It's the fencing and protection of the pool so that young kids can't get into it and drown.
domestic swimming pools and stuff?
Yeah, checking off the fencing, if they have to be fenced or I think lockable caps works for sparkles and stuff like that. So it's that whole requirement to have obviously the child safety issue of ensuring that obviously they're protected. No, it's the fences, your fencing requirements.
Well, maybe not. Item number 88, on page 88, is actually, it refers to the valuation of the forestry Well, I think this is a wee bit scary because having about 30 years in forestry and associated businesses, I find it's hard to figure out how you evaluate the forest and the wood price that fluctuates, probably from $160 to $80 overnight.
And you're talking about the appendix, page 88, councillor, or somewhere.
I've got page 88 written down here, Your Worship, but I'm
Well,
not.
it'll be the end of page document.
It could well be. Oh, okay, right.
So the valuations are done at a particular date, usually the end of the financial year, and that's made clear in the valuation report, and which so in our annual report, etc.
So a valuation is done every year regardless of what the valuation of rating.
So it depends on our accounting policies, Mr. Robson, they are annual asset revaluations.
Yes.
So our accounting policies provide that we will revalue fixed assets every year. Those are the policies that this council has adopted. And because it's adopted, annual valuations is required in accordance with the Accountant Society professional standards that continues to maintain valuations every financial year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just a comment really that it's quite notable, I think, that this council or organisation has moved to a quarter of its debt level or debts, a quarter of the way to 25% debt in 1 year. If we keep tracking like that, we'll be at our debt ceiling in 4 years. And that doesn't include internal borrowings. So this organisation, I believe, has been quite financially prudent or conservative in the past. So we're in a position where we can respond to this COVID pandemic, whereas other councils around the country, such as Auckland, are fairly limited in their response. They're having to cut costs quite significantly. So we are in a good position, but I just wanted to make sure that we're aware that this is a fairly significant jump in debt in 1 year. And I hope that when it comes time to looking at the long-term plan, that we'll also consider our operating expenses as well, not just a way to get more money, receive more money, revenue from the community, but look at the ways that we're spending money.
So pick up on your comment, councillor, and that's the reason why we'll be discussing that as governance in a few weeks' time. Just to way forward. Thank you. Any other comments or questions in regards to this item? Councillor Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think that in response to Councillor Dyer's comments, which are important, but I think it's also to realise that one of our highest risks is the underinvestment in our infrastructure, and it's a key role and focus that this council has got, and it's important that we continue to invest in our infrastructure for our communities. The other thing I'd just like to comment from the meeting yesterday at the Finance and Assurance Committee, that we felt it was a fair and reasonable rate increase. It was financially prudent and it provides the council with an opportunity to ensure that we continue to deliver our services to our communities. So even it's under very financial constraints and economical hardship, the minimal increase we felt was fair and reasonable, and as I say, provides opportunity to continue to provide those services to our communities. And in that, Your Worship, I'm prepared to endorse the recommendations that have been put.
Thank you, councillor. Before I ask for a seconder, are there any other questions in regards to this matter? Councillor Fox.
I'd just like to mention that the funds or money that we spend on the capital works or infrastructure is a fairly small portion of what this organisation spends in total.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Raventhorpe, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you again, team, for your comments. Next item on the agenda is item 7.2, the setting of rates for the financial year July 2020 to 2021.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. This report is a requirement of the Local Rate and Government Act to adopt the resolution for the rates it intends to set for the financial year. This is for 2021. This can only be done after you've done the annual plan, as the rates are also included as part of the funding impact statement in the annual plan document. This resolution also has to include the due dates for rates, and if we're setting any penalty or permits you to set penalties for 10% on your instalment and for any arrears in a previous year. This resolution will be made publicly available on the council's website 20 days after we approve it. A couple of things I'll draw your attention to is under the Section 54 of the Local Government Rating Act, council has the option to not collect small amounts. It is recommended that the council continue not to collect where the individual assessment is less than $10. We've done this in the last previous years. Council has engaged in a legal advisor to undertake a review of this rating resolution as well as the rating fizz that's in the annual plan. All their recommendations have been incorporated into these documents. And the last one is we do water metered rates. And what happens is you get a rate for your metered water, and then every quarter you get an invoice for your consumption. What we've proposed on this is to realign the due dates with rates. So you've got one date where all your rates are due, 4 times during the year. And that's actually in line with ICC's due dates as well. So it doesn't matter what advertisement you're hearing, you know that rates are due when you pay them. Because in the past, the alignment hasn't actually quite worked well with their financial year. Last year, council agreed to put 10% instalment on metered water as well. Shifting this alignment would allow council to also do the 1st of July for the arrears penalty. You can't set that now, but what I've done is included a recommendation in here with if your intent, if that is how you'd like to go down. Because what we like to do is after our 4th instalment, we send a letter to owners that still have outstanding rates to try and encourage to work with them to try and get things sorted before the end of financial year. So I'd like an indication from this council if that's how they'd like to go down with water, so we can give them the same courtesy and heads up that that's what we're going to do next financial year, rather than just, well, any questions?
Thank you for that. And just noting that this has had considerable amount of public input as well through the community boards. And as you probably say, especially in regards to some of the setting of those costs. Any comments or questions from councillors?
One question just about that consultation with the community boards. Was that the last elected group? Because I think our local community board only had consultation on the halls fees, but so it wasn't for all rate setting, was it?
It was open to everybody previous to
last October. Okay.
There was also,
opportunity.
it's also November, I think, with the Northern Board meetings.
Yeah.
They went for the local works rating and budgets.
Yes, so this includes all the estimate meetings we went out to for the local portion and it comes through. Yes.
Okay. You have a recommendation as a councillor can move recommendations as per what is up on the screen there. Sorry, so you have the full resolution on your agenda. It's been pretty well worked through. Councillor Ford, seconder, Councillor Harper, all those in favour? Once again, thank you for the work and for the public, for our community, for their input as well. Next item on the agenda is 7.3, the speed limits bylaw for adoption on page 31 of your agenda.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. It's nice to be here in this flesh, not on a screen. The purpose of this report is to present the draft speed limits bylaw for adoption by council. It's at page 31 of the agenda. A brief outline of the process followed thus far. Preliminary consultation was held in regards to the proposed changes. council carried out formal consultation in accordance with the special consultative procedure. A statement of proposal was endorsed by council. This was followed by a public consultation period. Submissions were heard and received by council in December of 2019, and deliberations were held in March and May of 2020. So a summary of the key changes made to the draft bylaw since it went out for formal consultation is on the table at page 33 of the report. And council is now at the adoption stage. It has made decisions on the draft as an outcome of consultation. Those changes are now incorporated in the draft in front of you for adoption. So steps after adoption, I'll jump back and forth a bit here, include public notice and letters to stakeholders, so that's police and NZTA, and those that submitted to the process. So we heard feedback from council that this letter will include a summary of the changes to the bylaw, so that submitters will be aware. The operative date is 12th of August, 2020. And matters that have arisen as a result of consultation, but that sit outside the bylaw process, include road safety and speed limits on Stewart Island, will be presented to reports at the committee and community board level in August. So review of this bylaw is due within 5 years, but council may choose to review it at any time if it so chooses. And I'm happy to answer any questions before turning to the recs at page 32.
Thank you. Any questions thus far? Note that this isn't going to come into force until Wednesday, 12th of August. Okay, don't think of any questions. I'm not going to move. Sorry, Councillor.
It's not a question, Your Worship. I just commend the staff for the great work we've done to get to where we've got to.
You're going to bring the recommendation.
Yes, certainly.
And I'm happy to second it, Your Worship, and commend staff on the transparent nature, the getting considerable feedback from the public and listening to that feedback and making suitable and appropriate changes. So, well done. I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Just moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 7.4, council management.
Risk management
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. This is agenda item 197 for agenda. So the purpose of this report is twofold. The first is to update council on the status of the higher strategic and corporate risks for the April to June quarter. So as part of the risk management framework, the high and very high risks are reported to council. And secondly, this report recommends that council adopts the revised top strategic risks to become effective from 1 July 2020. Council's top risks for April to June quarter have been reviewed by the executive leadership and were presented to the Finance and Assurance Committee yesterday. The committee stated its satisfaction that the risks were being appropriately monitored and managed. Councillors will see in the attached register that 6 of the 10 primary risks to council are categorised as high or very high. However, thresholds for 5 of the 6 are assessed as lowering due to the mitigations that are currently in place. I'd just like to highlight that the use of the risk status has been used in this quarter to capture where aspects of risks are currently being realised due to COVID-19, and therefore these risks have a watch and brief in place. In terms of the review of the priority ratings, the ELT met in February to review each risk, and this has produced a proposed new order of top strategic risks for council. The revisions made in February were adjusted again last month with the assessment of risk 14 moving to 5th position and the inclusion of an emergent risk moving into number 4. The Finance and Assurance Committee have considered the revised top strategic risks at its meeting yesterday and recommended that council adopt them today to become effective 1 July in line with the start of the financial year. I'm happy to take any questions. There are also a number of board members present for these specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, as everyone knows, this is a living document, a working document, and the ELT consider changes in their working environment. They assess these and they presented them yesterday as been explained. And they're here for you today to go through again. So are there any comments or questions in relation to this? For your item yesterday. Councillor Vice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just regarding number 4, comment. Inadequate, incomplete or lack of strategy policy impacts the well-being of the district. So, we talked before about this debt track. I wonder how easy it would be for one of the staff to prepare an Excel spreadsheet, just some of the key segments of this organisation's cost structure, and when it comes time to consider different aspects that are flowing into the organisation, such as the Biosecurity Act from central government, put it into the simple spreadsheet and see the impact that that would have on rates. Real simple. I think that's good. Lack of strategy impacting the well-being of the district. It would be, I believe, would be quite good to have a simple way of seeing the impact of this.
So some of it will be crystal ball type situation.
Well, that's right. I mean, there was the figure given in this well-being. I mean, the biosecurity, $9 million. Put that in as an expense. Let's see what effect that has on the.
So, like, we need to make a comment.
Not at this stage. Like the head of discussion.
Through your worship, I think also through the long-term plan process, there's an opportunity to address some of those key issues that do emerge. For exactly the answer to that job. So there is a process coming in the next few months that will start to discuss those a lot more in depth and the prioritisation.
Certainly a lot of things to discuss ahead of us, especially in regards to long-term plan. So take your point. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Bob.
Number 7, financial conservatism constrains progress towards strategic objectives. So financial conservatism there is presented in a slightly negative light, but you could also look at that being a positive aspect of the organisation. So I'm not sure that it's
both ways.
I'm not sure if it constrains Auckland councils in this conservative recommendation. Constraint.
Yes, thank you, Bishop. I'd just like to support Sarah's comment because what's important in that risk 6 is the mitigation aspects of that and keeping a close or watchful eye on in the current circumstances. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at your risk itself, and it's got risk 6 on page 207.
Really worship there's 2 lots of information there. One is up until the end of June, and then recommendation D is for effective from 1 July. We're at the 2nd.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Talking the same thing. I think
Yeah,
it's different numbers, yeah.
Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, I'm happy to move item 7.4. Seconder, Councillor Keast. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is 7.5. In relation to review of section 2.3, natural features and landscapes, page 214 of your agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Tom, councillors and council staff. My report seeks to review the landscape section of district plan in advance of a full review. So protecting outstanding landscapes and natural features from an appropriate development is a matter outlined in section 6C of the RMA, and it requires council to identify and protect those landscapes. At the moment, our current operative district plan is quite a massive document in that space, and it's not as robust as it probably should be in this number of future issues bearing on our landscapes. And it's recommended that bringing forward some of that review will help us maintain and enhance those landscapes moving forward. So the body of work is looking to be a collaborative piece of work with Southland District Council, Environment Southland Board District Council, Te Amarama, to jointly review the landscapes as a region. And there's paragraph 7 there outlines some of the components that would form part of that review process. It would be aligned with best practice, and it would be highly likely that there would be more regulation in some of our landscapes once some of those more significant areas have been identified. So effectively, in terms of the legal considerations, the changing a district plan is provided for under the Resource Management Act. There's a process that we flow through as part of that process and community views associated with that. And effectively, the funding allocation can be funded through existing reserves in the district plan review budget. So my recommendation, or the analysis of options, is to undertake a review or not to undertake a district plan review. And my recommendation is option B, to undertake a district plan review, and a number of advantages associated with that. So recommend the resolution C in accordance with my recommendation. Any comments or questions on that?
Thank you. So we have yourself up for a few bit of work.
Yes, it's a piece of work that needs to be done at some stage, and I think bringing it forward is the right option. So, issues that may be coming in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I certainly support that we need to do work in this area, and it's tempered by the amount of dollars that may be required. So it's a balance. We need the information, but we need it in a timely manner, and we need it in a way that doesn't expose us too much financially. So have you got an update on the costs of the various stages of this proposed review?
Yeah, certainly. So effectively, in paragraph 7, there I've outlined some of the pieces of work that are required. So a region-wide landscape assessment. So through a shared model, effectively, the regional council is funding a large portion of that, and by the time you get South District Council and the other agencies involved, a cost share approach creates more region-wide collaboration and consistency in the policy framework, but also a cost share of the actual dollars, and you can compare apples with apples. So something that's outstanding in the Carlton City Council area can be outstanding in the South District Council area, as opposed to each of us having a different approach and not having that ease of doing business, and better alignment to those policy frameworks is better. So out of those pieces of work in 7 there, largely the majority of those are already paid for our existing review process, but getting it to the decision point is going to take some time to public consultation, and there is the risk of appeals once a decision is issued on that as well, which we're open to. But in any case, the piece of work around landscapes is required to be done every 10 years as part of a district plan review process. So the review on our current landscape section of the district plan started in about 2009. So it's already been some time since we looked at the landscapes, and the district plan became operative in 2018. So it's only been operative for a couple of years, but effectively the review started quite some time ago. So it is actually nearing that time where we have to review it anyway. And this review will create a bit of a transformational shift from what our current rule framework is in that space to something that's likely to be more restrictive in accordance with the legislative requirements.
Thanks, Marcus.
Councillor Duffy.
Oh, I just endorse the comments that Mr. Roy's making. I think there will be a cost with this, but I think the cost of not doing it is probably greater. And the opportunity to do it on that shared basis is a very opportune time. I'd move the recommendation B, the recommendation with option B.
Councillor Duffy's moved item 7.1 with the recommendation D. Before I put it for a second, are there any comments or questions?
Second.
Oh, yes, second. No other comments or questions?
Just a comment, Your Worship, I think it's an important piece of work, but I think also one of the key factors here is our environment and how we look after our environment, and that's all part of this particular process. Yep, there's a cost associated, but there's always a cost associated with when you're looking after our environment. So it's imperative that we actually do the work.
Correct. It's not that kaitiaki tangan role that we've got as an
Exactly.
organisation, and making sure grandchildren's grandchildren can appreciate
Enjoy that
the sense of
environment.
place.
Thank you. So the recommendation has been seconded. All of those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, it's appreciated.
Keep your weight for we are. Next item on the agenda is 8.1, the reserve classification change to enable Fire and Emergency New Zealand to expand their fire depot at Ryman.
Morning, Your Worship and councillors. Fire and Emergency New Zealand own and operate a fire depot in Drummond on land owned by the council. They wish to build an ablution block as part of a nationwide drive to provide basic amenities at all fire depots. In order to facilitate this, the reserve classification of 2 lots are required to be changed to local purpose reserve. This will enable a lease to be entered into. We seek a resolution that these reserve classifications are able to be changed.
Seems like a pretty simple request on that. Doesn't it? So now it's a question of solve the whole thing. What a conflict. I think it'll move items out. Second by Councillor Scott. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Shovel ready.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 8.2. The officer Susan McKenzie isn't able to be in attendance. I'm pretty sure it's self-explanatory. However, yeah, the unbudgeted expenditure for around the
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, actually, Mr. Russell on. Mr. Russell on Zoom?
No, he's not.
Sorry.
Don't need to yell on that.
I actually think that Ashby Brown might be hightailing it from his office to come and present the report on behalf of Susan, but perhaps in his absence, it's pretty straightforward. So look, I'm happy to talk to the report. It's as indicated in the report there was that we're all well aware of the flooding event that occurred in February, and a reasonable degree of damage occurred in some isolated areas along the trail. And fortunately, there's a fund that the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment administers through the Great Ride program, and Susan was able to access that funding and successfully be granted 100% of the repair value. So effectively, this report is seeking approval from council for the unbudgeted expenditure. Obviously, funnily enough, we weren't able to predict that this storm was going to occur. So obviously we hadn't budgeted for it. So look, that's the highlight reel. Happy to open it up to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you for coming on board with that. And yes, certainly something that no one would predict, but certainly an extreme amount of water came down through that weather event. So congratulations, or thank you, big thank you to Henry for 100% funding of this. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Kramer.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just some clarification. I think it's great that we're able to access that funding for the trails, which is good. I'd like to know who the master trail builder is. I see this reference made to a master trail builder. I'd like to know who or what company that is.
I can tell you who it was not.
Okay. Righto. So
and can confirm that, but
okay.
I think it was Jonathan Kennett.
Okay.
A well-known trail designer who works closely with MB up and down the country, and is one of the cycle trail pioneers nationally. But
yeah, Jonathan walked that trail when it was first marked out, if I remember, Councillor Douglas.
Yes, he did.
No, that's great. Thank you for that, Mr. Russell.
Yep, and thank you for that clarification, which is good. The funding, is that funding capped at that price? And also, I see that if we go out for tender, we're not quite sure what the final cost may be. So is there a potential liability on Southern District Council to make any financial contribution to the trail in the event that the cost of the repair is going to be greater than $379,793?
Good question, Councillor Kramer. Our understanding is that we worked closely with the trail builder to ensure that there was enough contingency or capacity within that budget. But obviously, as we've experienced around the table before, these the pricing and estimates can deviate. So look, what we'll do is if in that instance the pricing was to exceed the budget, we would of course need to come back to the table for clarification, and perhaps our first port of call would be to MB to ascertain whether or not any additional funding was available through that fund.
I think, if I may, Your Worship, I think that would be a wise move, that we actually seek that clarification from MB, so that if it is greater than what they've tagged so far, that they will actually underwrite the 100% as they've indicated. So I think we need that assurance, and that would be appreciated.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor.
Yep, I also see that there's a figure there for employing somebody. Is that in addition to what's been funded? I see that's been underwritten by MB as well. Did I read that correctly? I think it's something about $40,000 for engagement of somebody.
I didn't see we did see the full.
I don't think so. Certainly not in relation to this scope, Councillor Kramer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, no, a big thanks to MB for coming on board here. And Matt, did I read in the report where the finished trail surface should be at a superior specification to some of the existing trail? Because as in the report, there have been the odd complaint from cyclists about the roughness of the trail in certain parts, and that with these repairs, we will try and get it to a standard that is firmer and faster than the existing trail at the moment.
Councillor Douglas, I might defer that question to Mr. Brown, who may have a better idea than I regarding the specific specification that the trail is to be constructed to.
Your worship, it's where the trail is to be repaired as a result of the flooding. The specification generally will be higher than what's presently there. It will offer an improvement.
Yeah, no, just by way of clarification, when the trail was first built, the surface was firm and hard, but over time the wind has blown out some of the fines, which has resulted in the trail surface being slightly rougher and therefore requires more energy to propel yourself along. And in the repairs they've done in the past, there's been some crusher dust put on top, and when you hit that, you immediately pick up 2 or 3 k's an hour. So it'd be nice if it was all like that, but I understand there's quite a cost attached to that as well. So it's something to bear in mind.
Councillor might get an e-bike.
Wash your mouth out.
I think I'll let the team build it to those specs, but if you want to keep in contact with the team, it's cool. I think we'll stick to the any other comments or questions around this? Councillor Kramer's raised a couple of points in regards to that funding. It goes over the top, and that'll be kept in honour. In the meantime, we have the recommendation 8.2 A to D.
Just for clarification, please, your worship, is that based on Matt's comments in mind, that you will be seeking confirmation from Lee that it will be 100% funded. So do we need an extra E that supports that?
Guided by the chair.
Through you, your worship. Perhaps it's only an issue if pricing is returned and the funding is exceeded. So we would be outside of our approved budgeted expenditure limit at that point anyway from council. So we would have to come back to council, as well as at that point discussing with MB any additional budgeting required.
Yep, thanks. Thank you for that, Mr. Russell. Happy with the recommendations as they stand there.
Thank you, Councillor Kramer. Councillor Kramer's moved item 8.2. Is there a second? Councillor Douglas. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is 8.3, and I think we've got coming in through Zoom. Goes.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Dee. We're now discussing 8.3, page 233 of the agenda. Thank you.
This report summarises Council's financial results for the 10 months to the 30th of April 2020. I will take the report as read. But the operating income is 2.05 million under projection year to date. Operating expenditure is 2.7 million under projection for year to date, and capital expenditure is 5.9 million under projection year to date. I trust that report has been read, and I'll be open to taking any questions.
Thank you. There was a question from Councillor Byers yesterday, which is going to be answered in regards to the bench. Are there any other questions around this? Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a solid waste of 42,346, saying due to additional wheelie bins that have been supplied. I would have thought that would be covered under your rates. That's a lot of wheelie bins. Is there sort of, am I reading that wrong, or?
So these wheelie bins, the cost is recovered through recoveries. The reason why it's outlined in the report is the capital expenditure spend doesn't have a budget, so it looks like it's $42,000 over projection, but that monies, the whole 42,000 is recovered.
Just a question around the two questions. One is the employee benefit expense. Is that like leave liability and KiwiSaver, or what's included in the employee benefit expense on page 244?
Employee benefit expenses.
Salaries and wages, all employment costs.
Okay. And just also in regards to the other council expenditure, it's quite it's quite a large amount to have lumped under other. Like, it would be good to have that broken down a bit further, because it's.
So I think, Ms Robson, that classification is as per the required standard for it. So that's we're required to use that framework in our public reporting. But obviously the other pages of the report provide more breakdown by activities, etc. To where, so page 243 has got the breakdown by activities, which is a mixture of them all. So we can't change the face of that statement because that's it's a regulation, isn't it?
Yes, it is, although we could change the face of this because this is just the monthly financial report, so we can display that differently, but that was part of the discussions that we had with the committee, that they wanted it more in line with what we presented at the end of the year. However, I'm more than happy to provide a bit more analysis under that. What I'd like to know is it an ongoing request, or is it just a one-off, just to get an understanding of what's actually.
It's more just that if there's a difference, it's quite a large amount of money to figure out where the difference might be.
And so that's why in those fund statements, we break it down by activity, so that we can provide some of that analysis in that manner. So it's not by expense, but it's by activity. But like I said, I'm more than happy to break it down.
Similar point was raised yesterday, and the question was the same as Ms Robson about just want it for now, or do you want it permanently?
Probably for now is a good start.
Yeah, just to give everyone.
And I think it does reflect this exactly as the Mayor said, a reflection of the fact that there's a number of new councillors that are sitting around the table. If you haven't seen that level of detail, that was previously presented to the council. But after a point in time, everyone's sort of sit across, there's a lot of information there, so we need to consolidate it. So one of the responsibilities I've got is to do a little bit of training around some of that stuff. I'll provide all councillors.
Thank you. I just noticed you said there was a further question under district leadership.
There was a similar type question in regards to Councillor Owens one, just a breakdown.
Yes, probably, because when you see in the annual plan, I think the percentage that's spent on district leadership, then the public have a perception about what is made up, and that, as I do, and I'm probably completely wrong. So it'd be good to have that clarified so I can explain that as well.
It's absolutely the same thing with Councillor Owens.
So page 243, there's a wee table at the bottom, does give you just a very quick snip of the activities that make it up. So it's representation and advocacy, community development, district support, corporate support, forestry. And I know it's still at a very high level, but it just, if you hadn't noticed that table was there.
Thank you, and I had seen that, and I'm thinking forestry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Just following on from Councillor Menzies there. So, and are you going to provide a breakdown of those district leadership, representation, advocacy, community development, district support? Break those down.
Yes.
Oh, great.
I'll provide the analysis for that. I'll do it as one off and just email it around everybody so that you can see it. And then if we require anything further, then we can discuss what else we need going forward.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions of staff? If not, you have the recommendation there that we've received the report. You can move that recommendation as you second it. Councillor Ravencroft, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Dee. Next item on the agenda is 8.4 on page 249, the bridge weight restriction postings. Yeah.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. So this report is around updating the restricted bridges across the district. So in order for council to comply with the Transport Act and the heavy motor vehicle regulations, STC need to, as a minimum, annually confirm any of the bridge postings or restrictions. Stantec were engaged to complete these inspections. They were given a list of 79 structures to inspect. It is less than the 2019 list, which had 90. That's a result of bridges being replaced or converted from bridges to culverts, and in some cases closed. So the posting assessments process generally aligned with Section 7 of the New Zealand Transport Agency Bridge Manual for evaluation of bridges and culverts. The inspections include looking at external condition assessments, external defects assessments, as well as internal sounding of particularly the timber elements, and then accompanied by any drilling as required. It should be noted that the current posting process does depart from the full compliance with NZTA Bridge Manual, and that's the allowance has been made for postings to be based on the central on bridge postings, which you may be familiar with, and that's really around the eccentric loading on the bridges, and does relate to bridges that are single lane, and it is an area the council has adopted in the past. So that's really, from a central perspective, looking at when vehicles travel down the one-lane bridge, that they're not hard up against the curve, that they're as central as they can when positioned along the bridge. We have put some measures in place to try and, for those high risk structures, to try and ensure that that vehicles do travel. Benmore Bridge before it washed away was a really good example of that. We put side trails up and pop-ups down the edge of the bridge to slow vehicles down, but also ensure that there's compliance of where they're travelling in relation to the bridge. So out of the bridges, the 79 bridges that were on the list, 74 were inspected. Out of the 5 that were not inspected, 1 of those were replaced before it was inspected. 2 were in the process of getting replaced, and that's part of the design build packages that are out at the moment, having work done, and 2 had access issues. 1 was Waghorn, and that had subsequently been inspected, as well as the suspension bridge, Lake Monawa suspension bridge. We have engaged WSP to carry out some work for us there on the future of that bridge, and while they were there, they carried out a more detailed assessment for us. And as indicated in the report, at the time they were still carrying out that inspection. They did come back yesterday and they have confirmed that the posting listed in the report is still acceptable. So the posting is therefore not recommended to change for the suspension bridge. So the net effect really is that after completing the inspections, there's 77 bridges that still need posted and their postings reaffirmed. Just before I complete, I'll just point out in the report there's one error with Scott Road, just the bridge number itself, or the road number is stated as 25936. So it's got an extra number in the actual report, but the bridge posting itself listed at the back is correct. So Scott Road should be 2596 without the 3. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Menzies.
Just a clarification around why we had WSP and Stantec inspecting the bridge at the same time.
So we had engaged WSP previously to carry out more extensive work on what upgrade, repair works and future of the suspension bridge. And we had engaged Stantec pre-COVID. And so just with the sort of the net effect of the lockdown and timing and coming out of COVID, they sort of ended up clashing.
But we wouldn't have needed both
no, so
to inspect.
Correct, so
So
that's
we'll-
why WSP carried out the inspection rather than Stantec and confirmed the posting, because WSP were already there doing some other work.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately, with COVID, the inspections were from Stantec were programmed and scheduled the week that we went into lockdown. And obviously that didn't occur. So it just resulted in post-COVID, everybody was trying to get back and get around and get back onto the jobs, and yeah, just had a clash unfortunately.
Thank you. Yeah, councillor Cast.
Thank you, Your Worship. The 20, in total is 27 poor and very poor ratings. Are they priorities for the bridge replacement program, or do that depend on other factors?
It will depend on the other factors such as the actual access availability. So whether there's alternative access available or not. As you see, the bridges that are getting replaced that are posted already, but from a prioritisation perspective, it's focused on those that don't have any alternative access.
So of those ones, how many are going to remain as a risk?
Well,
they're all a risk now.
They're all a risk.
But I mean, say in the next 12 months, that program.
From a risk perspective, those that we've seen as a high risk, the likes of Channel Bridge as an example, we've put a gantry system in place. So it's about how we mitigate and manage that risk. And hence why we also do annual inspections of the structures. It's around trying to mitigate and reduce the postings as required. It's around trying to mitigate that risk while still maintaining access. In terms of which ones are up for replacement compared to this list, I'd have to, off the top of my head, exactly say. But all the bridges that we have are on this list.
So, if I may, the page 271 of the report, 5.4, routine maintenance required. Is that, it sort of almost sounded like we had missed some points there, or somebody hadn't covered that off properly. Is that just, is there an issue there, or is that under control? That's part of the regular program that should be undertaken?
So some of the aspects is like vegetation. So if we have a flood, or any, we'll wash vegetation against some of the pillars or that, and so it's clearing out of that. In other areas, it may be that just over the year, at the time of inspection, having gone out and clean, say, drainage hole right from the deck that would allow water to get away. So it's, and so those aspects also have been noted. They'll get passed on to our maintenance contractor and program for repeating.
And if I may, the sign, so most of these have a 10K limit on them. The signage for that, how prominent is it? Do people, I think to guess that many times the bridges are crossed at a much greater rate than that, but just thought sometimes that I've noticed the sign isn't particularly big.
Yeah, so the signage aspect does come up from time to time, but we are limited by the size of the sign. It's set out in the traffic regulations, like how big the sign should be, what size lettering, the coloration. That's all set by law, so to say. So we're limited with what we can do, as well as the distance. Aspects around how we suppose mitigate that is one of the likes of the letters that go out to your trucking companies. In addition to that, so trucking companies are aware of where the postings are around the district. Another option, potential option, you could go and put a bylaw in place for each of those, but as we've just gone through the speed limit bylaw, we know it's not really an effective and efficient way of doing that on an annual basis, especially when you're replacing bridges.
Fair to say that those who've got their heavy traffic licence know what to look for, should be obeying it.
That's correct. And where there's bridges that are, say, down a road that may not have a turning opportunity, we have put sort of advanced signs in place we're aware of issues.
Councillor Douglas, Councillor Duffy.
So it really just follows on from that discussion. I mean, we do the work, we post bridges, either weight or speed. And so it is about compliance, because we can do all this work and yet it can still be on, say, a tanker route. I understand the milk companies are given copies of these postings. So it's around the level of compliance. How do we ascertain what level of compliance we've got or non-compliance?
It's just the size of our district, the location of our structures does make it really difficult from our side to comply, and for the police for that matter, because some of these bridges are at the extremities of our network. Just because they're at the extremities though doesn't mean that those with appropriate licenses should be, just like speeding, you know what the speed limits are. Police aren't everywhere, but you need to comply with the rules. So from a council perspective, it's ensuring we do what we need to do from a regulatory perspective and mitigate our risk in that manner. So.
Councillor Duffy.
Do we circulate to bus companies and agricultural contractors as well?
Not specific, or to the best of my knowledge, not specific to agricultural companies. Do circulate it to forums that they may belong to. And it is posted on our website and advertised in the newspaper, so we're required to do that.
Okay, Councillor Byers.
Thanks, Hartley. Just the posting assessment process, page 251. The effect of the process here is that some of the bridges have as little as 50% of the posted capacity for vehicles over on the side. Is that part of what's notified, or truck companies understand that the size of the bridge is not as strong as what we've suggested it is? Am I reading that right?
So the posting of 50% or whatever the percentage is, for your question.
Sorry, number 8 on page 251.
Yeah.
So this method of posting is a departure from what's recommended by the NZTA. And the resultant effect of this is that many of our bridges have as little as 50% of the posted capacity for eccentrically placed vehicles.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that?
So the eccentric loading is if you're coming onto a bridge and you may be, it's a sideways impact as a result of the load of the vehicle coming onto the bridge. And therefore, if we don't have the central aspect of it and you're more over, say, to the left-hand side, use Benmore again as a good example, at the end of the bridge, the deck where some of the vehicles were running, was cantilevered out, so you didn't have a beam running underneath it. So if they're running on that far left-hand side, as an example, it's much weaker there than if they stayed central and actually running more across the beams themselves. So that's what that comment relates to, is that the calculations have been worked out that they are staying central on the bridge as opposed to running off to the one side. And as I pointed out, these are all single-lane bridges, so it's not that it's a two-lane bridge. Therefore, there's quite a reduced risk of running off to the side.
Can we leave it out about 300 or 400 each side of the big beams? So they've got to come on from central.
And stay central.
Stay central all the way through.
Because if you veer off to the side, then it's weaker.
So there's no shortage of risk there.
No. And that's the need to get them. As per item 48 on your report, it's so that's what I need to follow.
I'm just wondering, has there been any thought as to the use of trail cams or something to see what level of compliance there is with postings?
Yes, and we have trialled that before. It is quite tricky, pick on a milk tanker as an example, to actually know how full the tanker is itself, because it's enclosed unit, so is the tanker going over when it's empty or is it going over when it's full? If it's a one way in, one way out, I can have a guess. But if it's just another through road, it is quite tricky to actually determine what the loading capacity is. For the lower posted bridges, your big agricultural, like a harvester going over it, it's almost no question about it. In those cases, we have pulled up and had discussions with the those that have conscripted. But yeah, in terms of, as I said, those enclosed vehicles, it's quite difficult to actually determine are they loaded or not loaded. So you just have an image of a vehicle going over without knowing what its true capacity is.
Thank you. Any other questions in relation to this item? All right, so you have item 8.4, recommendations are pretty straightforward there. So, Councillor Keys, is there a seconder for Councillor Harper? All those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you very much for that. And I think Mr. Childers summed it up with his introduction earlier this morning regards to the All right, item 8.5 is the application for the Provincial Growth Fund for funding for observation. Rob.
Maureen, good morning, Mayor Tong and councillors. So you have in front of you a report asking for approval to submit a funding application to the Provincial Growth Fund for an upgrade of the observation rock platform and the resulting unbudgeted revenue and expenditure. So I'll take this report as read and I'll just briefly outline the key points. Observation Rock is the most visited viewing platform on Stewart Island, Rakiura. The platform has safety issues which need to be addressed, and it is now becoming a destination for nighttime viewing, with the island gaining accreditation as an international dark sky sanctuary. Upgrading the platform will enable Observation Rock to continue to be one of the key activities undertaken by visitors to Stewart Island, Rakiura. The proposed upgrade of the Observation Rock platform aligns with a range of regional plans and also aligns with the Stewart Island Rakiura Community Pool Plan. This project has been endorsed by the Stewart Island Rakiura Community Board, Stewart Island Promotions, Great South, Dark Sky Steering Committee, and a number of other people and organisations on the island. The funding for this project was initially applied for by the Department of Conservation through the Stewart Island Visitor Levy in 2018. The initial estimates for the cost of the project were $100,000 and a grant of $80,000 was approved by the allocation committee. Subsequently, it was discovered the project required more extensive engineering than was initially anticipated and the cost increased significantly. In addition, DOC advised that they were unable to find the extra funding required and the project has been on hold since then. Council was encouraged on behalf of DOC to put an application forward to the Provincial Growth Fund after presentation of this project to Al Morrison and Kate Stiles of MB. The total cost of the project is $193,500 and that includes a contingency of $16,000. And the funding application to the Provincial Growth Fund is for $113,500. The Department of Conservation have the responsibility for project delivery and management and will be responsible for any legislative and statutory obligations related to the project. This is a DOC asset and maintenance going forward sits with DOC. Any agreement that Council enters into with the Department will ensure that the roles and responsibility for each party are clearly detailed. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that commentary in regards to this report. Certainly something that's been hanging around for a while over there. And it'd be good to get it moving, especially in this current environment. Get some employment down there.
Correct.
Are there any comments or questions in regards to this? Councillor Ford.
Just a comment, the project has grown a little bit to what it started off as. And finished application of this levy was 10 more improved.
That's cool. I've been there a few times. It's what I've got on mine now is pretty high class. And it's good to see that Department of Conservation will be the final owners rather than the community.
Correct.
So, Councillor Harper.
Through you, Bruce, how much, or council, how much maintenance is the dark sky, has it made any difference or?
Yes, we're getting people that take notes, often on purely watching nights. And last week, the sky's been tremendous, and it's certainly picking that up. So it extends the desire to look at another night, carries on. So we are getting people through the cold night. Not to say that it's cold.
Yeah.
As I was certainly enjoying it.
Okay, so you have the recommendation down here to move the reading.
I just one point of clarification. So just to be clear, so it's on conservation land, is it?
Yes, yes, it is. We're just getting it surveyed next week actually, because our road reserve may just be on the border of it. It's not actually an issue. We've spoken with staff here, and we would just have to give them permission to occupy some of the road reserve. So we're just getting it surveyed to make sure that it's, completely on the land.
So the other option would be for DOC to close it essentially for safety reasons is the other option if it doesn't go ahead, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Road reserve, I wouldn't try and form a road up there. All right, I'm happy to move the recommendation 8.5. Is there a second? Councillor Scott. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Get it moving, Karen. Next item on the agenda is 8.6 was the revocation of the delegations that we agreed to back in. How long ago was that now? March.
Seems like a long time ago, but it actually wasn't that long ago. Yeah, look, I'm happy to take the report as read your worship. It's pretty self-explanatory. So happy to answer any questions.
So Councillor Owen, you asked me some questions around this, so we have moved it forward. Due to the current situation in regards to COVID-19, see what we've got now, 7 new cases. It's open if they remain in isolation. Okay, Councillor Owen.
I just have one question. Were any decisions made under those delegations that were given during that time?
No, it was all the decisions were that it had to go council if council was possible, services and assets committee, if services and assets committee was possible, emergency committee, if services and assets, in fact, if council was out, services and assets was effectively going to be out. Emergency committee, if possible, and if you had widespread infection, pretty good chance that emergency committee is not going to be able to meet. Also a good chance chief executive may be out, so you'd be relying on acting in an extreme event to probably make the decisions. But we essentially operate as per normal. All the normal council meetings, all the normal committee meetings, operating within their old regime.
I have one more question, because earlier you mentioned, is it something on the 24th of June? Does it change around the Zoom?
So the pandemic order expires on the 24th of June. 24, 25, and we haven't had notification of going to extend it at the moment, but obviously will be some announcement, or maybe some announcement if they do decide to extend it. It's done.
We would go back to the existing legislation which requires the council to be in person.
Half of council to be in person. So as half of normal standing orders and normal local government act is that for council you need to have half physically present. The other half can be on audio or video conference. Committees under our standing orders also require half, but there was that legislative piece that said you only needed 2 physically present. Hence we changed services and assets committees to only require 2 people to be physically present at the notified place. So again, in an extreme event, if we could still get 7, we might have had the services and assets committee at a council's home or something, and then another one in the same place, and then be able to effectively run it on Zoom, was the thinking.
But we could probably assume, couldn't we, that if we would go back into a level 3 or 4, that the government would put those regulations back in place that we could operate by Zoom again.
Yeah, so it would require, the Pandemic Order under the Emergency Preparedness Act, Epidemic Preparedness Act, I think it's called, and then special legislation was passed following that procedure to vary from the standards. So yes, they would have to go through that process again of special legislation to enable the revoking of that, and it's reasonably expected they would follow that pathway. But in that extreme event, again, I think I wouldn't discount large numbers. If you have the widespread transmission, councillors and staff, and like anybody else in the community, could well end up not being able to work even via Zoom. And that was why we put that quite comprehensive process in place, because we just didn't know how this might unfold. And certainly if you look at the numbers that are still occurring overseas and the number of deaths and all the rest of it, it would affect Southland just as much as anybody anywhere. But those sorts of trends took hold in New Zealand.
And it comes down to vulnerability as well.
Yeah, and when you look at the definitions of vulnerability that were put in the legislation, a good proportion, a very high proportion, I suspect, of our elected members would fit into that category. So hence why we were careful about trying to ensure a level of protection to extreme case.
So we picked on young ones like John.
Could I have that in print?
So yeah, so
Never in dispute.
it wasn't required, and let's hope we never ever require it, but it's got to be in place for obvious reasons. I'm happy to move that we revoke the delegation, so I can do that.
I can see it.
Second, Councillor Owen, all those in favour? Against, carried. Next item on the agenda is the last one before we go to, actually, take a break. 8.7 is a management report.
Okay, just by way of the recent announcements around freshwater reform, obviously government's very keen to push that on, and that will be of quite a significant change for the way in which freshwater is managed in New Zealand, particularly given the statutory recognition of Te Mana Utawai and some of the other issues that are flowing through in there. So it's something we do need to watch and be actively involved with the region, obviously with the regional council and our communities. Important announcement going through there. The Auditor General Government Procurement Rules, obviously being very conscious of that in the current environment. And there's some very useful information, and we'll just summarise the regional data, but there's also district data available on the Ministry of Social Development website, showing numbers of jobs seeking support, which I think is about 250, 220 for Southland District at the moment. It's the change between January and now, so it's not, I think 230 was when I looked to the end of May. So every month they publish that data. It's quite useful to keep an eye on. And as you'll see, the Southland region there at about 4% is the lowest region in the country in terms of, at the moment, the numbers of jobs seeking support. So just useful information to be aware of. And we're happy to take any other questions.
Just with regards to the freshwater reform, I know that there's a few people in the public who are a bit concerned about the Waiau River being excluded from that legislation. Does council do any advocacy or anything around that aspect, or do we just leave it to central government to decide?
So it's not excluded from the freshwater reform piece, as I understand, and it's a pity that there's anyone's very expert than me on this, but my understanding, even some councils might understand it better. But as I understand it, it's actually the order relating to diversion of water to the power station. And that's outside of the regional policy statement.
There's 5 waterways that are excluded, which are outside of it, and one of them is the Waiau, because of the water take for the Manapuri power station. So there's a group in Tiana and Tuatapere and Tiana that are working through it. I've forgotten his name up a little bit. Paul Marshall was heavily involved in. There was a petition going around that's had a lot of support. Yeah, it won't come through our stuff.
So there were quite a few submissions to the regional policy statement, regional plan hearings, and regional council simply said it's beyond our control, we can't do anything about it. So it's governance, it's in legislation, because in power station and TY obviously, so you actually need to central government issue. So it's actually completely outside of it.
And that's where the approaches have been made to government. It's a big can of worms, and has been for a long, long time. And I'm sure Councillor Harper, when we to Tappara in 84, it was a nice piece of river, but it's not now. Okay, any other questions in regards to the management report?
Comment, Worship, about the Project ARC fund, receiving the Project ARC funding. That's pretty exciting that that's coming through. So.
Absolutely. You were involved with that when you Councillor Duffy?
Yes. Yes. We're looking to bring a information to council on the whole Project ARC.
Project July, I think it's really after July.
But receiving that funding was a huge endorsement.
Yes, Councillor Kramer.
Yeah, just clarification, and don't want to harp on the situation. However, I see on item 56 around the Mountain Cycle Trail, I recall somewhere, and it's identified as being 2 applications to MB. One's for the flood repair, but there's also an additional application which is funding for a cycle trail manager position of 45,000. So I knew I'd seen it somewhere, so I'd just like to have some clarification around that, please.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm happy to provide that clarification.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Kramer, you were asking earlier if there's an employment of a new individual is planned, and it's not what we've MB have made available funding for trail managers, and given that we have a trail manager committed to our trail, we submitted an application, and we're in fact successful for with that application. So we've been able to reduce the funding burden as a result of obtaining that funding.
Yeah, it does clarify it, so that's what it's after.
Councillor Scott.
So is that 45,000 a one-off, or is that 45,000 per year, or is that able to be reapplied for?
It's for a 3-year period. So
not 45,000 a year, 45 over 3 years.
45,000 each year. So the total value is, excuse me, $135,000. So we were very happy to receive that funding.
Oh yeah, I think it's good that we've got that funding. Yes, very much so. So is the person, if I may, is the person an employee or a contract person to us?
The funding is allocated as a mixture to the existing employee who works for Southland District Council as the trail manager, and there's also a component of the funding is allocated to some maintenance activities as well.
Councillor Duffy.
It's just regarding item 76 on the community task force team. So what does that mean? That we don't have a task force, or that the task, like what is the makeup of the task force?
My understanding of that funding has been pulled, isn't it?
Mr. Russell, do you want to?
I'm sorry, Councillor Duffy, are you able to, which paragraph or page was that?
It's item 76 under community facilities.
My hub.
It's
would
Chris's,
have a,
the one with Chris's team out in the field, that were the probationers.
yeah, unfortunately, I can't get to it on the hub. It's crashed. But sorry, could you repeat the question, Councillor Duffy? You were asking about task force.
Yeah, well, the statement says that the Community Task Force team is currently operating without any assistance from the Corrections Department. So I'm just wondering, what does that result in?
Right. So over the last few years, the funding commitment from Department of Corrections has been reducing, and with it also the labour commitment. So we've effectively, what that statement means is it's a combination of those two things. We've got a team of 3 within that task force team on staff here at Southland District Council, and they remain productive and occupied and committed to either maintenance or capital works across the district. But at varying times, there is varying commitment of resource and funding from Department of Corrections. And as I said, we've seen that decreasing significantly over the last 5 years or so.
So does that mean we don't have any people with legal requirements to do community work?
It's a human and financial.
Taking part?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. It's more than just the administration of it.
Yes, correct. It's physical labour resources on the ground undertaking the work. There's been a reduction in those resources.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you were just comment on that. During COVID, things, the Corrections Department pulled all the labour out of their area, but they returned last Friday. So they'll be back to the area Friday.
It probably won't be as full on as it has been in the past, but yeah, that may change.
I think it's going to be good where all your words out.
Yes. Just remember you're live here, Councillor. No, that's covered.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, questions around the management report?
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cromer. It's moved that we receive the report. Second by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, thank you. So we're just going to pause, just so the media are aware, we're going to pause, we're going to go into public excluded, but then we're going to have a break for a cup of tea, and we're going to, straight after a cup of tea, we're going to go straight into the Services and Assets Committee. So just to allow you to not run away if you don't want to run away. It's all about you guys today. So I'm going to move that we go into public excluded as per the recommendations in the agenda. Is there a seconder? Councillor Scott. All those in favour? Against? And I am now going to adjourn the council meeting until the end of the Services and Assets Committee after smoking. So go and have a break. Come back at 5 to 11. Everybody got there? Okay. No.